Hello, everybody, and welcome to Authored Content. This is episode 73, according to my bean counting friend over there, who apparently keeps track. I, as always, am Morton, and with me I have my two co-hosts, James Williamson.
Hi.
With amazing lighting today.
I know, and I'll move it around over the course of the. There we go.
Wow, that is so spooky.
I like that one.
And Ray Villalobos. There's no
Howdy,
excuse for a lousy website.
That's right, the for here to mention bean counter that keeps track of the episode numbers.
And today we have a special guest, Anne-Marie Concepcion.
Yay!
Hey!
So,
Hi.
Anne-Marie, why don't you quickly introduce yourself to the people who watch this show?
Yeah, sure. My name is Anne-Marie Concepcion. Thank you. It's actually excellent pronunciation. And I'm dialing in from Chicago. I am an InDesign publishing consultant and trainer. I specialize in workflows like InDesign and InCopy, InDesign to EPUB, but I also have side interests such as using Facebook and Twitter and other online media to market your business, since that's what I do. And I love to talk about Twitter, especially. This particular topic is the only one that would have encouraged me to actually do this, because I just came back from 5 days of training. I got in at midnight last night, and I fly out again Sunday morning for another gig. So this is my one business day at the office, but I couldn't resist the siren call of evangelizing using Twitter for business.
Wow.
So thanks for inviting me.
So,
Thank you, definitely. You are a super busy person. You do like a ton of different things.
Yes,
So I was really actually super happy to get you for Twitter, because I teach a kind of an overview class every semester, and there's like a social media day, and I know that I totally go into your courses and nab things from it, because they're really, really good courses.
He steals from you, in other words.
Exactly. And I always get like all these questions from the students, and the first one that I typically get is, I have a Twitter account. I was selling my couch once, so I posted that I was selling my couch, and nobody got back to me. This doesn't work. Why should I even try to use this, right? So, what do you say to somebody like that, right?
I say you're doing it wrong. That's right. I mean, I think a big I lay the fault at Twitter's own doorstep. Their online web interface is horrible, I think, and that's about as far as people who try to test out Twitter go. They create their account, and then they look at the Twitter.com website, and if they follow hundreds of people, then they just see hundreds of obnoxious tweets, and if they try to reply, they never get a reply back, and they think this is horrible, and then they leave. So I think the best way to use Twitter is not to use Twitter.com, is to use any other app for the desktop or for mobile that will let you filter the fire hose that is the Twitterverse into just those topics that you're interested in, or just those people or lists or hashtags or keywords that you're interested in. And that's what I do. I keep my Twitter client open all day. I use it more than email, and have found so much value from it, finding clients and freelancers and answering questions. I just love it.
So you talk about clients. Which clients do you recommend, and which ones do you use?
Twitter clients. I was just sort of nosing around to see what are the latest apps, because I try every once in a while different ones, and I'm never happy. I just keep going back to Tweetdeck. Sorry, I use Tweetdeck, which I think is now owned by Twitter, on my Macintosh, and on my iPhone I just use the regular Twitter app, because I don't use Twitter a whole lot on my iPhone. On my iPad, I'd have to look. I don't have it open here, but could be Tweetbot, which they now sell for $4.99. It's an app. The one thing that you need to look for in a Twitter app is something that will allow you to create multiple columns and easily swipe from column to column. So each one of those columns is going to be like a live feed of just a part of Twitter.
Yeah, because Twitter's kind of like a fire hose. I remember when I started using it, this is a long time ago, it took me a while to just understand what it was, because you're basically just looking at hundreds of people talking about whatever at the same time.
Yes, I know.
there are conversations that happen, but you need to kind of happen to be on Twitter when those conversations happen to catch them, and then
Yes.
identify them inside this massive stream of content.
Yeah, it takes. You have to. You're absolutely right. You have to sort of shift your brain to working how Twitter works, and not try to make it work like an email program. Like a friend of mine doesn't use Twitter a lot, but one of the reasons is that whenever he logs on to Twitter, he feels compelled to read every single tweet since the last time he logged on. Because he feels that he would be doing his friends who he's following a disservice if he didn't.
Uh-huh.
And I said, no. It's just like everybody knows that you're just going to sort of take a glance and see what's happening and then move away. And that's why, like, if you're trying to tweet a message about an event coming up, tweet like every few hours, because a lot of people aren't going to be seeing it when you tweet the first time. Say it again a few other times. So,
so I have, I actually have Tweetbot up on my screen right now, and you can see kind of how I see Twitter. This is I rarely go to the website, but this is kind of how I monitor Twitter. I have I use lists a lot, so I have lists of different topics that I want to keep track of.
There you
go. For
go.
example, I'll have like a news tweet with just a few accounts that I'm sort of monitoring for news, and as they publish new things, I just kind of follow news. And I have, for example, of course, my list of Lynda friends, people who are in lynda.com, that I am interested in knowing what they're doing so that I can reply to them. And then I have a couple of other, links here. So I have a stream, of course, for just authored content, which is the account that we're monitoring. So this allows me not just to monitor my account, but another alternative account, as well as these different streams of things. And I think that's probably the key to using Twitter. Like, you definitely do not want to look at the entire stream of your data, because if you're somebody like us, we follow like maybe 100, 500 or 1,000 people. So that, if you were to look at the stream and try to read that stream of data, number one, it would be extremely boring.
Yes.
Number two, you would never be able to keep up with it. And I think maybe people feel guilty about that sort of thing.
Absolutely. I'd happy to show how I'm using Twitter. I'm not sure how to share my screen though.
There's an icon on the left called Screen Share, and you can click on that.
It's like a green screen with an arrow in it.
Okay. Should I do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Do it.
All right. Screen share for Hangouts, and select the window, and I'll select Tweetdeck.
You can select just a tab or a window that you want. Awesome. Okay, so this is Tweetdeck, right?
Yes. And it's saying
So what are we
something
seeing
about.
here?
Did I say deny here?
No,
Under,
this is good.
No, we're seeing it.
You're seeing it? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I'm using Tweetdeck, and so one of the things that every user should do if you start an account is to monitor the mentions anytime somebody mentions your name. So that's the first column I have over here. Anytime anybody enters A. Marie, I'm able to quickly reply or retweet immediately. So when I got back from this training gig, I told everybody if the fastest way to reach me, faster than email, is just to tweet me to A. Marie, because I'm looking at this constantly. And then I added a sample Twitter list. This is called Must Read, where I actually do have a version of this list, but I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, called where there's like the 20 people of the people I follow that I do want to read all their tweets if I can. So I added, of course, this crowd to this list. And you can add yourself, too, if you want to see it yourself, and a couple other local designers and so on. And then I'm following the hashtag for today here, and we have, I see, managing editor, big company in New York, just said, should Twitter be incorporated into the lead gen strategy for any organization? That's interesting. Okay, well,
do you think that I get that a lot too. Like, does every company need to be on Twitter, or is it a company that's trying to do a specific thing, like maybe generating leads, or what do you think about that? Anybody, or what kind of people should be trying to get into Twitter to make it work for them?
In my course on lynda.com, I have that's one of the very first videos in Twitter for Business is should I be on Twitter? And it talks about that very question. And my answer is, of course, first of all, are your customers or your potential customers on Twitter? Because that's when you're a business owner, you want to be where your customers are. If I was completely shocked when I first got onto Twitter to see how many people were talking about InDesign on Twitter. there were hundreds or thousands of people who were posting questions or looking for freelancers on Twitter, all about InDesign, which was my bread and butter. And I was like, oh, I can't believe that I missed this. And then I just tried searching for terms. This is what I recommend to users who are curious, is to go to search.twitter.com. You don't even have to have an account. And do a search for anything having to do with your industry. Search for your competitors' names. Search for, like if you own a laundromat, search for laundromat. Search for, you would be completely shocked to see how many people are talking about what you want to be part of the conversation. And and the other part, though, is that do you have time to deal with it? You don't have to be the person who tweets. You could hire somebody or get one of your staff members to do the tweeting. But even if you are not going to do a whole lot of tweeting, it is an excellent information source to learn about what other people are talking about in your industry leaders, conference organizers, authors, and to just to sort of keep to monitor the conversation. I was talking to somebody just this past week, and she said she doesn't even check CNN.com anymore when she sort of hears rumors.
Yeah.
She just goes to Twitter and she searches for PepCon or for Obama or whatever to see what are people talking about, and she can quickly get up on the latest news on Twitter. I thought that was interesting.
It's interesting because you've probably also noticed that a lot of news organizations now spend an enormous amount of time on Twitter, as in tweeting news.
Yeah.
Because they've realized people don't go to them for the news. They go to Twitter, and they want to be on that. So they will tweet very catchy headlines and try to bait you to go off Twitter and go on to their website to see it.
Right.
And if you watch any of the big news stations like CNN or MSNBC or anything like that, every single host has a Twitter handle. And it's funny because they say, tweet me during the show, and you follow them, and they're tweeting, and you're like, I can see you're not tweeting. You're clearly talking to me, so someone else is doing this. But it's become a thing that has to happen for everyone.
Yeah, it is interesting that a lot of people are, right, yep. I find it fascinating that the television is really jumping onto the Twitter bandwagon. Like every television show has to have its own hashtag. And
hashtags during the show, too.
It's during the show, and it's weird because sometimes, so many people have, I record and watch it later, and nobody's talking about the show now, but they talked about it when it was live. But sometimes I do try to watch a show live just so I can participate in that live hashtag conversation, because it's a lot of fun. Like, I love this show called The Prophet. Have you guys ever watched The Prophet? It's about this guy who comes in and he helps a small business for an hour by buying 50%.
Oh, yeah, I have seen that.
Yeah. And then for a week he takes over, and people talk about the idiot business owner all the time. They're tweeting about it. Pretty funny.
Hey, what's funny? I remember I'm a big Survivor fan, and I was in the West Coast, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna do this for the first time ever. I'm gonna join live the Twitter stream while the show is playing. Of course, the show then hours after it plays in the East Coast. So I logged in, I'm watching the beginning of the show, and they're saying, congratulations, winner. And I was like, oh man, it just messed up the next 3 hours for me. So you do have to be careful when you do that. But what about getting started? Because I meet a lot of people that say, okay, I joined Twitter, nobody follows me, I'm tweeting. Like, how do you get to the point where you have enough followers to really maybe make a difference? I mean, we all are probably above average, Twitter.
Well, I think you have to remember that just because you don't have a lot of followers doesn't mean that you're not making an impact or getting some good out of your time on Twitter. Like, I listen to a lot of users that I don't follow. When you add a user to a list, you don't have to follow them. So if you looked at my Twitter account, I'm followed by thousands of people, but I only follow a couple hundred. However, I am following many more because I have a list of, I have one list called Chicago Media. So every newspaper and photojournalist who tweets in Chicago, I like to keep a list of that. It'd be interesting seeing how they're talking about local news. And none of those people know that I'm following. And if they were feeling sad and depressed because nobody's following me, well, I'm listening to them. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, it's not the numbers, it's the quality of the people listening to you. If I were just getting started, I'd create live search columns in my Twitter app for keywords having to do with my industry. Like I listen for any mention of InCopy, which is Adobe's forgotten app, and I'm a big fan of InCopy. So people will say like InCopy sucks, or I hate InCopy, or how come Adobe doesn't fix InCopy, or they have a question about it, then I'll jump in and reply. They have no idea that I'm listening to them, but I'll reply that way. And if you are a business owner looking for more customers, you own a laundromat, and you just listen for the word dry clean or shirt stain or something, you can jump in and help people. And as long as people say, "Who is this stranger?" like Superman coming in to rescue me with this wonderful answer, they'll follow your profile to see who you are. And then that's where the key for business owners is to have a powerful profile with a link to your website and a way to contact you immediately. I constantly, I look for freelancers all the time on Twitter, and it's very aggravating when I see a freelancer who knows what they're talking about for web development or EPUB, and I go to their Twitter homepage and there's no contact information. There's no website, there's no email address, there's no phone number. Then I have to do a Google search for half an hour to find out how to reach them to see if they're interested in bidding on a project. So that's key for business owners, is to add contact information up front in their Twitter account.
Yeah, I'd also like to say too that growing Twitter followers is something that happens very organically. Unless you're going to spend money on it, which I really don't advise at all. What I think you have to do, there are people out there that do that.
I know.
I think it's ridiculous because you end up with a bunch of other bots following you, and you don't. Yeah. But the important thing is to join the conversation that you're a part of. Most of my followers are in the web design field or interested in web design. And that's because very early on I started to join that conversation and participated. And the more you participate, and the more you talk to people, the more followers you'll gain. And it's just something that's going to happen over time. So don't expect it to happen overnight. You have to put in the work to get it too.
Yeah, you have to put in a little time, and you have to do a mix of tweets also. You can't just tweet, deals that are happening, or you can't just be 100% sales. It has to be, I would say more 50% like links that would be useful to your potential customers. That's a really powerful thing to do, because there are lots of people on there saying, I can't find anything useful. But look, James keeps posting these fantastic links to CSS checkers and free HTML apps and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to start following James because he is finding some really good stuff. And then they'll retweet that kind of stuff too. And so their followers will say, he's retweeting something that James did. Let me see what James is doing. And that's how you get the virality impact from Twitter.
There's also...
I think... Sorry, the important thing to me is always to make sure that you're providing value. Yeah. Providing value is what's going to attract people to follow you. It reminds me of this other Dilbert where Wally is in a meeting and he's saying, I pet my cat for 2 hours and I didn't feel any better. And everybody's like, it's not about you, it's about the cat. Like, it's for the cat's benefit. Well, Twitter is a little bit like that. It's not necessarily for your benefit. It needs to be about, your audience and your customers' benefits. And then as a result of that, you will get credibility, and they will be willing to listen to what you have to say once you've provided some level of value.
Yeah, there's a company in Canada that does a really good job at this. They're called London Drugs. This is a drugstore. That sells, for all you non-English people, they don't just sell drugs, they sell other stuff too. But they started a new Twitter and social media campaign in general a couple of years ago. And they post tons of stuff like this, just, quotes, and then they have some stuff about what's actually going on. And then they have tips, an enormous pile of tips, like how to get the right type of air conditioning for your house, or if you get a stain, how do you fix it? Or, a simple project you can do at home. And this channel is compelling in and of itself, regardless, even if you didn't live in Canada and you never even knew what London Drugs was, following London Drugs gives you so many tips on all sorts of random stuff. And they've really embraced this idea that it's not just about marketing themselves, it's about setting themselves up as someone who you want to follow because they have something interesting, compelling, and engaging to talk about. And there's a whole thing about authenticity in here that if you want people to follow you on Twitter, you need to be a real person, which is really hard for a business because a business isn't really a person. But in that case, you have to define a language, and you have to define what type of stuff you're going to talk about and how you're going to approach things. So you're perceived as someone you can have a conversation with, rather than just a blasting advertising that screams at you anytime you look at it.
Right. Good point.
So let's say you're a business.
Okay, I'm a business.
I have the big challenge. Let's say you're a business and you want to, build up some sort of stable base on Twitter without that becoming all-encompassing. What kind of strategy do you start with to get people engaging with you?
If you're asking me a question, I couldn't hear it, so maybe you can type it into the chat, or you can sign it.
Yeah, she said her audio is degraded.
My audio is going down.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. So, number one, I think in terms of businesses, the biggest mistake that I see in businesses on Twitter is they ignore the fact that it's a two-way communication. There's a two-way communication between them and the clients. A lot of them are not really prepared for when clients speak back to them. They're not really prepared for when people have negative things to say about them, and that's something that I think people could learn to handle with a little bit more grace. Don't be surprised when you have clients that are going to be talking back to you.
Mm-hmm. I think thanks for typing the question, Ray. It's kind of funny that we're talking about this because I had a heated conversation with American Airlines last night when I came back, and I don't follow them, but I found their hashtag. I found their account while I'm in line at O'Hare at this huge, hundreds of people in line at the cab thing. O'Hare has 3 main terminals, and Terminal 3 is dominated by American Airlines, and the cab line is always horrendous. And cab drivers pick up people on the 1 and 2, and they pass by 3. And I was tweeting to American Airlines, why don't they get their own cab company or something? Because I try to fly United at Terminal 1 just to avoid this problem. And American Airlines replied and said, that's not our problem, that's the airport's problem.
Wow.
And, I think it's your problem because I'm tweeting right now about you and about how it's hurting your customers. It's an ecosystem. You don't live in a bubble. And he said, well, just talk to an agent. And I said, okay, where is an American airline agent around here? And he said, no, an airport agent. And I said, sorry, I thought you were being helpful. So you don't want to engage in that kind of a conversation with your customers. You want to bend over backwards to make them happy. And if you don't think it's going to work out right in the end, take it offline ASAP. Tell them to send you a direct message or send them your direct email or something like that, because thousands or tens of thousands of people are watching. They're watching the conversation. So
and everybody likes a good train wreck.
Say it again?
Everybody likes a good train wreck. When there's something like that that's happening between a client and a company, a lot of times that will get retweeted more than the really well handled customer service, because everybody likes to see it when things blow up like that. Right.
And when it
gets magnified.
When it's handled well, then they get a lot of great press from it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a question. We got a question on Twitter.
There's another question here about.
Yeah, there's another question from TechBolts. Is would it be better to have separate Twitter accounts for business and founder, or can the founder use the business account?
That's an excellent question. I personally like it when the founder is using the business account, and sometimes they tweet about their personal lives. Like, I think the head of Twitter talks about his vacation, and heads of different companies will talk about personal stuff. I really wish Linda would do that herself. The lynda.com account is strictly business, and Linda Wyman herself gets on. She's got her own Twitter account. She'll occasionally tweet, but she's not really into it. But I was telling the people who do social media for Linda that I think that it would give your Twitter personality a little bit more warmth, though it's actually it's really good Twitter personality right now. But if you would tweet like pictures of the cafeteria and your new speakers coming, or we just opened up this new building, or here's a picture of James who's recording a new title today, that kind of stuff adds some personality. And so I think that no matter what the size of the business, it's good to have some personality injected into it. That said, though, the problem is if you hire somebody who's tweeting for your business and then they leave,
Yeah.
who do those Twitter followers belong to? So you have to be really careful to make sure that as the business owner, if you're not tweeting and you're handing it off to somebody, that you own that Twitter account.
Yeah,
Yeah, which I was going to ask a question.
You should really have yourself and the company, because the company is kind of its own thing, whereas you are the person, so you are mobile irrespective of the company. I guess that's the challenge, because if those two get too intermingled and something happens either to you or to the company, then there's a disconnect to what people are used to.
Yeah, so what I was going to ask is, what do you recommend for somebody who's maybe an introvert and is not really, doesn't really enjoy getting out there? I mean, I know that some people are shocked when I say this, but I'm naturally like an introvert, and it really has a lot to do with where I get energized, and I need time for myself a lot of times, but I'm not the kind of person that'll just go to a party and be like the life of the party, or likes to go like hang out. So how do you get to be somebody who can still be kind of relevant and use Twitter maybe for your advantage in advancing and maybe your career?
You asking me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So how can you have a good Twitter personality if you aren't really that kind of a party and bubbly kind of personality in real life?
Yeah, perhaps like you don't really like talking about yourself necessarily. Like you're just kind of maybe a shyer.
I know. It feels uncomfortable. I guess I would say the best thing for somebody who's unsure of what to tweet, or would this be awkward, or how can I be more lively, is to watch the other Twitter feeds of people that you're following that give you a good feeling about that company. Follow the companies that are your vendors, and see which ones are attracting the more followers or seem to be more engaging, and just mimic them. If they every once in a while tweet a picture of an office event or their kids on vacation or something like that, then maybe you could do the same thing just every once in a while. When I first heard of Twitter, I thought it was the most asinine thing I'd ever heard of, actually. and I thought, why would anybody care what I'm eating for lunch? And I still hear that. I think I got on Twitter 7 years ago, and I hear that to this day. Why does anybody care, like, what I had for breakfast, that kind of thing? And you don't really, nobody's tweeting what they had for, well, maybe a couple people are tweeting that, but
yeah, I was going to say.
They're making fun of that. It's of the personality part, but that is the strength to me of Twitter, and even like Facebook to some extent, and all this kind of social media, is that you're putting a personal feeling to the corporate brand.
I'm gonna tweet about what we're doing right now with a picture, because that's not
take a selfie of us.
So did we address evil penguin's question?
Evil penguin.
Yeah.
Evil penguin.
So
I didn't see that one.
Evil leprechaun penguin actually tweeted us, and apparently that is a webcomic, and they're wanting to know how to promote their webcomic and get new followers. We kind of talked a little bit about that, but I think again, obviously, you're going to probably be very interested in other people that have webcomics out there as well, and the more you talk to people and the more you self-promote by tweeting to them and say, hey, check out my comic and tell me what you think, you'll get retweets, you'll get people that are talking to you about things, and that'll help get your brand out there a little bit more. Asking questions on shows like this one, for example, will help. Now
I have a tip for that. Like one of the things that I did when I wanted to grow my presence, like in the community and in the Twitter sphere and just in general, is I started sort of keeping a list. So I have this list here called Interesting Tweets. It's really people who are well known in the industry.
Interesting Tweets was all about.
Yes. So this is what I called the people sort of that I'm targeting, for getting to know, and also for them getting to know me. And I'm sort of looking for meaningful conversations between these people and I, because I think they're cool people. I think I should get to know them. I know that they're very busy people. They're very popular people. So Remy Sharp has like a ton of followers. Chris Coyer is another one that's in here. etc., etc. So I keep that list of people who I think I want to engage. And also, you can go in and find
Ray,
out
why am I not on that list, Ray?
because you.
I thought
Because
I
you guys are in a
recognized
special.
Damn it!
You guys are already in my special Linda Peeps tweet, so you don't need to be on this other list. What? No, this is Remy Sharslakes, I think.
Oh, okay.
No, but that's one of the things that I did. Like, I look for people who were good in the industry, and then what you really want to look for is people who are engaging with them. So you want to kind of friend people who are engaging, not necessarily just their followers, but followers that are engaging with them because they are going to have a likelihood of engaging with you as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then another list that I have that's really important to me is this online Peeps tweet is usually people who have said something to me in the past. They've mentioned one of my courses. They've asked me a question. They have engaged with me personally. So once I find somebody like that, then that's somebody that I want to keep on a special list because I know that there are going to be people that are going to engage with me in the future.
Did you say this is Tweetbot?
This is Tweetbot. This is the Mac version of Tweetbot.
Because I'm that one guy that all three of you are like, oh, don't be that guy. I use the actual Twitter application.
I do too.
I use the Twitter website, and that's all I use. And I do drink from the fire hose. But that looks pretty cool.
You know what? I do that too. I used to use HootSuite. I'll show you HootSuite because HootSuite is very similar to TweetDeck. It's you have multiple streams, and you can if you make a search, then it asks you if you want that search to become a stream, and you can have like stacks and stacks of streams here. So I haven't logged into this for months, so it's kind of funny when I go in and I'm like, oh yeah, I set all this stuff up. What HootSuite does too is that it allows you to add Facebook and Google Plus and LinkedIn and all these other things and get it all in one place.
Nice.
And this tool is actually not meant for people like me, single users, but for teams that work together on social media streams, and they do lots of analytics. And it's also a for-pay service more than just a panel. But honestly, I mostly just use Twitter. And it's funny because I used to tell people not to use Twitter specifically because all the Twitter scams only worked if you were using the Twitter website. All the ones that was like, oh, I found an offensive picture of you, follow this link, and then it would trick you into logging back in, and then it would give away your password. So using the third-party apps would be a really easy way of avoiding that because you wouldn't log in. But at some point, I think it was because I wanted to see what this new stuff was about, the new profile page and this promoted tweets and the mute function and all that stuff that wasn't in the third-party apps. And I just stuck with this because I also use Twitter for Android, which I love, and my wife cannot hate any more than she does. Anytime she installs it, she's like, God, this, and then she has to get a new phone because she breaks her phone. So she uses an app called Seemic as her
anger management issues.
Just about Twitter on the Twitter app for Android, but she uses an app called Seemic, which I believe was bought by HootSuite. But it's a cool little cute raccoon that monitors your Twitter feed. It's actually kind of funny.
So Twitter's actually, this is another one that I use a lot. This is actually Twitter's statistics. You can actually go to analytics.twitter.com and you can find out stats about what you have done in the past. And this is something that they just, I think, announced adding organic tweets to your tweet analytics. So you can go in here, and once you started getting some engagement, you can measure how well the engagement that you're doing is working in real time. So this is another cool thing. So you can say, hey, I want to see the tweets and the replies that I've gotten, and then organize these things in different ways. And you can see all kinds of different metrics here.
Yeah, you can see when you go on holiday.
It looks like a lot of work.
So.
Hold on. What's this?
Oh yeah.
What?
It's like a photo of somebody here.
Open it. Open it.
What are you doing?
This is what happens when you post pictures of yourself on the green screen behind you on Twitter.
Oh, guys, cannot believe it. That looks good though.
I
like
learn a lot of things from James Williamson.
You guys all did awesome jobs with that. I commend Ray specifically did an amazing job.
So we're talking about stats. Anne-Marie, what are your thoughts on clout?
What was that? I missed that.
You're gonna have to type it in, I think, for her.
I'll type it in.
Oh, what are your thoughts on testing?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, actually, that's something that is. I think it's a. I'm gonna start while she's reading it. Like, I think cloud is a really good way of at least kind of monitor if you want to know, am I doing a good job with my social media strategy? It's a measure that tells you essentially how well you're doing in the Twitter sphere compared to other people. So, it gives you essentially a score right here. Mm-hmm. So I'm like a 53, and I think the average is 40, and something like 62 is in the top 5% of Twitter users. So a 53 is a pretty good score. It's probably close to like in the top 10% of Twitter users. But that's a way of at least sort of keeping track as you publish things of how well you're doing. So I don't know what Anne-Marie's thoughts are on it.
I don't know. I kind of think the best indicator of how well or how important you are on Twitter is how many personal connections and sales you're making. I really don't care about how many, if I'm doing better or worse than other Twitter people. I do watch how many people follow my links to my websites or the other events that I'm promoting via Google Analytics. I follow those, that kind of Twitter stuff. But I gave up on clout a while ago. I thought it was kind of silly.
Yeah. I have to agree.
However, I have to confess I check my Twitter account daily, and I watch it as it ticks over the next milestone. So I passed 75 this week, and I was like, woohoo!
Yeah, I have to agree about cloud. I think it's a worthless algorithm. That's a random, arbitrary. People. I don't know. I don't have much faith in it.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because a lot of people who start with social media and Twitter, they go, oh, how do you get such a high cloud score? Or how do I get my cloud score is high enough? And then if you get a high enough cloud score, you get invited to these super lame events. And then and everyone thinks that that's some sort of engaged thing. The only thing I will say is I was in Vegas, and when I booked into my hotel, they had already checked me out on Twitter and found out that my cloud score was higher than some threshold, and because of that, they automatically upgraded me to a better room. And they actually said so. You have a really high cloud score, so you get a better room. And I'm like, I'm sorry? What? Oh, that's awesome. And then I figured, now they want me to take pictures and shit, so I deliberately did not tweet anything about the hotel just because they did that to me.
But dude, you just did. You just.
I didn't say what hotel it was.
No, but I think it has. If you are trying to figure out, if you're starting out with some sort of strategy, like you're saying, okay, I'm going to be really good about tweeting something every day. I'm going to be really good about engaging. I think at least it's a measure of how well you're doing compared to other people. If you know 40 is the average score, then that at least tells you, hey, looks like some of the things that I'm doing are, having an effect on that score. So I must be doing good things, and I think you can use it if you use it like that. I think it's okay.
But I have another question because Anne-Marie was talking about following statistics of people who follow your links. So do you use your own URL shortener or some other algorithm, or do you just use the one that's built into whatever app you're using to track links that people are following?
I do use my own shortener. I use j.mp, which is part of Bitly. So, and I can follow how many people followed that link on j.mp, but I think that to me, that service really got degraded. There used to be, it had its own set of analytics that I can't find anymore in the user interface. But so now I just add that part that Google Analytics gives you to the end, source equals Twitter and so on, to the end of important links. Not all links, but the important ones like come to our webinar next week, that kind of thing. I'll add that to see how many people are following that. And that's really useful because you could easily drill down in Google Analytics to find how many people, what percentage of people visiting a web page came from a Twitter or a Facebook or a LinkedIn link.
Yeah, and I think now that Twitter has their own analytics tool, it's less critical because all you have to really do is just dig into Twitter's analytics, and no matter what link you put in there, it's going to count how many people clicked, how many people interacted. Right. So it used to be where that was really big in HootSuite, like they would automatically take your links and process them so that you would know analytics, but now it's a little, I think, less important.
Yeah.
What
Gentlemen,
about
I'm sorry to say that I have another conference call that I have to be moving on to, so I'm not sure.
Well, we're gonna
can I share
anyway. We are ending right now anyway because we're out of time. So
we are out of time.
Everything works perfectly here. That is full-time for author content. That is full-time for author content. We are back here next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. I'd like to thank Anne-Marie Concepcion for joining us with massive insight on everything Twitter. And you can
I'm typing it in, so don't worry.
And you can continue harassing us on Twitter about this and follow the hashtag AC73. And we will give away a 1-month subscription to lynda.com to the best question. So. And
the nice thing is, if you already have a lynda.com subscription, it's just going to add it to your amount. So
yeah,
if you're a subscriber, just go ahead and.
And we'll be doing this for the next couple of weeks. So if you follow along and you listen to this later and you realize, hey, I wanted to get in on that, just join us again next week. We'll be giving away more lynda.com subscriptions, which is super awesome. Finally, I'd like to thank my co-hosts, James Williamson.
Yeah.
Now you have to have dramatic lighting at all times.
I know. I'm going to take this around with me and just...
And Ray Vigilobos.
All right, see you guys.
And we'll see you all next week. Goodbye.
All right. Adios.
Yeah.